Namaste, Sat Sri Akal, and Assalamu Alaikum everyone. Welcome to Sabil Center. Welcome to the inaugural Muslim Diplomats lecture series. It's always gratifying for us to see some new friends joining us for the first time. So it behooves us to talk a little bit about what the center is, a little bit of its history. We are running pretty much on time. We're only 11 minutes late, so that's not so bad considering the weather and everything else. Sabil Center is a community strategic initiative of IFANCA, Islamic Food and Nutrition Council of North America. This place used to be a synagogue, a house of worship. This particular room used to be the sanctuary of the synagogue. Several years ago, as the Jewish population moved further west, the place was left vacant for a number of years. Then IFANCA bought it some 7 years ago and started renovating it. So what you're looking at today, in spite of our dust outside, took us 7 years to get to this point. Sabil Center has its origin quite some time ago, but it's only last year, May of last year, when we started our programming. The place, first of all, is dedicated to Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Anything and everything we do has to relate to him, directly or indirectly. Tonight's program is, of course, no exception. It has 4 objectives. A gallery exhibit about different aspects of Prophet Muhammad's life. Tonight is not the time to showcase them, but I'm sure there will be many other opportunities for us to share that with you, and it's a work in progress. A lecture series, of which we have had several over the years. Tonight we are starting a new lecture series called Muslim Diplomats Lecture Series, and I'll talk about the vision behind it in a minute. Then we have halal cooking classes, a halal kitchen. If you look behind you, see that big window, rectangular window? That's the halal kitchen, and we plan to offer halal cooking classes from it very soon. And lastly, but certainly not in the least, our community programming, which includes programming for the seniors in our community, as well as many other civic engagement-related issues. The exhibit that you see, which has nothing to do with tonight's event, is an exhibit that's been going on for some time. It's called American Quran. It's work of a LA-based artist, Sendal Burke, and it's been an exhibit at Sabil Center since last July, this past month. And it's going to be here till September 22nd. In fact, we're going to have a closing night on Saturday, September 22nd, so you will be getting an email about it soon. The tour dates for this exhibit, dates and times, are on our Eventbrite page, so Google Sabil Center and Eventbrite and you will see, and I hope you join us. It doesn't have to be a group per se, but many individuals have come in and signed up for different times, as well as groups. It's very pertinent to not just young people, high schoolers, college students, as well as young professionals. We have another exhibit that will be at Sabil next year, inshallah, and that's America to Zanzibar exhibit of Muslim cultures. We have contracted with Manhattan Museum of Children's Museum of Manhattan. I'm sorry, it's been a very long day. Children's Museum of Manhattan in New York, and that exhibit will be here next September 2019 till December. We'll be hearing about it very soon. But once I decided to write my notes down so that I don't miss anything. So part of the lecture series is Muslim Diplomats. There are other lecture series about contemporary issues from the Muslim world, young scholars, and interfaith, obviously. What's the vision behind this? It's perhaps more important than ever to build bridges between the US and the Muslim world. And by Muslim world, I mean Muslim majority countries. Those are the 2 expressions that we keep using interchangeably, but we are talking about 1/3 of the world, 1/3 to 1/4 of the world, and the US. American Muslims have a large role to play, and we at Sabil Center are trying our very best to play our role in building these bridges. It's a point of pride to me, personal pride and professional pride, that the very first lecture in the series is about Pakistan, and I cannot be more pleased and proud to have tonight's speaker as the first speaker. We'll talk about you a little bit more in a minute. This is a quarterly series, so we hope to talk about other Muslim countries and Muslim-related issues over the next few quarters. But a couple of things about Pakistan, because tonight's focus is about Pakistan and the US relations. Not many of Pakistani Americans know, especially the younger ones, not many of our friends know that when Pakistan was founded in 1947, it was the world's 5th largest country at its inception. You think the Islamophobes of the day didn't cringe at the very notion of a new Muslim country, which happened to be the 5th largest country in terms of population. Pakistan was also the largest Muslim country, obviously. Right now it's 6th or 7th. There's something else about Pakistan that doesn't get talked about. Pakistan is the only country, and I mean the only country in the world, which has had 4 Chief Justices of its Supreme Court. Not Justices of the Supreme Court, but Chief Justices of its Supreme Court, who belong to 4 different faith traditions. A Hindu, a Zoroastrian, yes, a Zoroastrian, a Christian, and of course Muslims have been Chief Justices of Pakistan's Supreme Court. Yes, Pakistan society has been rife with violence against religious minorities. It's a big blot. A lot of people have been working to remove that so that the white strip in Pakistani flag is not so bloody as it is metaphorically is right now, unfortunately. But at the same time, we cannot be oblivious to the fact that this country has selected 4 Chief Justices from different faith traditions. No other country in the world can say that. Please remember that if you did not take away. Sabeel Center is a place for community building and learning. So this is something of great value to you. Before I introduce the speaker for tonight, I'd like to thank a number of people who helped us put this program. First and foremost, Aman Sardar Malik. Aman, raise your hand, please. Please save your clapping for the very end. Aman Sardar Malik is a commissioned artist. 2 of her works are going to be displayed at Sabeel Center. She's the one who put together these flower vases and the flags and the runners. It seems like my bow tie was cut off from these runners. It was not, it was separately bought. Thanks for getting the joke. Tuba Ahmed, an employee of Ifanka, thanks for volunteering. Our facilities team of Shahid Rahim, Amjad Lodi, Saber, and their team. Homa Ahmed, my Kashmiri sister, she's responsible for the pink tea. There's a symbolism in having Kashmiri tea at a Muslim Diplomats lecture. Kashmir is one of the 2 issues that have plagued the Muslim world for the last 70 years, and we are nowhere near a solution, unfortunately. But Kashmiri chai being served at our events is a symbol of that struggle. Thanks for your efforts. If you like the tea, I'll take the credit. If you don't like it, that's Homa Ahmed right there. Razaz Advertising, she's responsible for the wonderful program book that you see. Take the time to read it. There's a lot of time and effort that went behind these things. I cannot tell you how many stress-related moments we spent on the phone trying to fix a comma here and a comma there, deleting a word and adding a word. So thanks for your patience in working with me. She's also responsible for the gift tonight. Adil Beg and Zain Beg. Adil is with Pakistan Consulate, but he's here in his private capacity, and he has been a great asset to Sabeel in terms of putting our programs together. He's responsible for the sound system, the audiovisual, and everything tonight. Now the speaker for tonight. You have his bio in there. It has been read at many other events. We had a private meeting with the Pakistani ambassador in Chicago last night, and he was saying that this guy is getting 2 favorable receptions every day. He said it with a little bit of envy. It was very obvious. But I said, yeah, he is, and very well deserved too. I've had the pleasure of working with 4 Pakistani consul generals over the last 12 years in Chicago. The level of professionalism has always gone up. But what we have seen with Tirmizi over the years, over the last 5 years or so, is a tradition of service and excellence that you are leaving behind. The pictures that I've selected that are in the program book are no coincidence, and neither were they selected randomly. There's some symbolism behind each one of those. How we collaborated with different universities, spoke at various events, including some interfaith, and he was a People's Council General. Many of you remember that back in December of 2014, a huge tragedy struck at a high school in Pakistan. It was late December. There was a vigil on Devon Avenue, and Faisal was there. Very cold night, I remember, but he was there. I've seen him speaking with taxi drivers in Chicago. They often get ignored because taxi driving, that's not glamorous. Yeah, people clamor to go to Doctors Association and MBAs and business professionals and whatnot, but not taxi drivers, but not him. He was there and he treated everyone the way he treats anyone else. There's something else that he's leaving behind, and that's something that meant a lot to me. This is a comment based on what his wife told me about him. She used to be a co-worker, a partner in crime. You raise the, yes, I'm talking about Hania Reis Tirmizi here. Raise your hand, please. So, now you can. She's been an equal partner in crime in raising, elevating the level of socializing and networking in our communities. You brought in elegance, a casualness at the same time, and a deep level for Pakistan that you share with many of us. He's also a pretty good poet. I wish we had the time to read a poetry she wrote about the life of a wife of a diplomat, but it's on her Facebook. Those of you who are her Facebook friends can read that. That is not only funny and humorous, but very true. But what Hania told me about her husband is something about his integrity. And when we hear about Pakistani statesmen, politicians, government officials, there's some negative stigma attached at times, there's negative connotation that gets thrown into the conversation. But it was refreshing to hear what she had to say about her husband, and not in a biased way. And that's something that I have observed. And as someone who has been really, really careful about following the law, abiding by the law, making sure that everything is done in accordance with the local laws and national laws, for that, I have tremendous amount of professional respect for you, sir. If there's one politician or statesman in the US whose family's reputation has not been maligned over the last 5 generations, and they have served the US in various capacities over the last 5 generations, is Senator Elias Stevenson III. He's a former senator from the US, former governor representative, and I told Faisal a little while ago that before you leave the US, you have to meet Senator Stevenson. And what a memorable afternoon that was. The senator and his wife, Nancy, came out of their state, received him at the door. Hania could make it that day, and they had a wonderful, wonderful tour. They made sure that the curator for the museum of Elias Stevenson's estate was there to give a private tour of their museum and their family relics to Faisal. Those are little things, but they go a long way in forming traditions, in establishing legacies of professionalism, and for that, we cannot be proud. So when I say that you are leaving behind a legacy of service and excellence, it is no exaggeration. Lastly, one more thing about Saville Center that just came to my desk this morning. We have a library here that is not officially open yet, but some of you have gotten a tour of it. We have over a couple of hundred books. Today, this book came in the mail, and I made sure that Faisal got to see this before he leaves Chicago. It's about Amir Abdul Qadir. He's the only Muslim who has a city in Iowa named after him. So there is an Abdul Qadir education project going on, and they have a little exhibit. Don't be surprised. I won't be surprised if we have that exhibit at Saville in not too distant future. But this is a little tidbit, and that's the kind of books and literary tradition that we hope to have at Saville Center. Now, we'd like to show the trailer of a movie, of a documentary that's in progress and will be released later this year. It's called Muslims in America. That's the cover page. The trailer is only 2.5 minutes long. You should be turned off this light. Thanks. And after the documentary, we'll have the keynote speech for tonight and then the dinner. So thanks for your patience.
The Muslims that first came to the United States when America was first being built.
That it's just impossible to not know what halal is anymore. Like if you're in New York and you're trying to catch food at like 2 p.m. on your way from one place to another, the only place to eat is a halal stand.
Concrete data for is the University of Chicago campus dining facility started their first halal campus dining program.
Where Dr. Khan made the tallest building in the world in the Sears Tower at the time in 1974.
They're like any other Americans. They're contributing to the well-being of the society.
9/11 के बाद दुनिया के हालात यकसर बदल गए.
Is what things were happening at that time. Little girls, they took off their scarves. They didn't wear scarves anymore. Yeah, you wouldn't believe. They made fun of my religion and culture and where I came from.
Donald J. Trump is calling for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States.
Trump's ban on Muslims was futile, right? People stepped forward, and I think right now in the United States, people are doing the best they can to protect one another.
Over the past 17 years, we see the ebb and flow of hate crimes against the Muslim community, but we do see that it's ticking up in more recent years.
Make the report, our hate crimes task force, this is what they do, they will follow up on it. We make a lot of arrests in these cases and we take them very, very seriously.
Muslim Americans have suffered from a lot of prejudice, a lot of profiling, and it's unfortunate, but I've also seen many people embrace Muslims.
Because if you don't feel included in your society, you're going to turn to the other people that you think understand you.
Right now, the Supreme Court is considering the latest version of the Muslim ban. And there's no doubt in my mind, there's no doubt in the minds of our friends and allies in this country that it will be struck down.
इस वक्त अमेरिका में हजारों की तादाद में खूबसूरत और कुशादा मसाजिद हर जगह मौजूद हैं.
Thomas Jefferson had a Quran that had his initials on it that he read.
They used to the idea the Polish is here, the Jewish is here, the Muslim is here, the Sikh is here, the Buddhist is here. So they know this country formed with foreigners.
So did you hear more about this documentary? The trailer, and this is only a trailer, paints somewhat of a negative picture, but towards the end of the documentary, and I've seen the final version, it paints a positive picture. Yes, there have been many problems, many struggles, but do we not have our Islamic centers? Do we not have our Islamic schools? Do we not have a thriving Muslim population that's very well engaged and integrated in the society? And that's the message of this documentary. For 5 years, I addressed him as Mr. Consul General in public. Tonight is my great honor, privilege to call you Mr. Ambassador. Please welcome Ambassador Faisal Tirmizi.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Good evening, Rizwan. That was a very kind and a very moving introduction. Thank you so much. Yes, this is the first time I've been publicly called ambassador, which is now factually true. After the Kyrgyz government has given its approval, and the President of Pakistan has already signed my credential letters. So technically that's correct. Chaudhry Munir Sahab, thank you so much Mrs. Munir, all friends. I came here 3-4 years ago when this was an ongoing project. And I was so happy that this was a house of worship, a synagogue. And that it has continued that tradition that God is being worshipped in this premises. But more important, it has given a platform to all Americans, irrespective of their faith, to come together, to talk, to break bread together, and to exchange views. This is what makes America great, the strength. People of different faiths, people of different nationalities come to this part of the world. I tell everyone, America's strength is not its military might or economic prowess. It is its ability to attract the best and the brightest from all over the world. It has been doing it since 1492, and it has continued. I am truly flattered and honored to be the first Muslim diplomat to come and speak at the Sabir Center on a topic which is of immense relevance. I'll be sharing some personal experience during my talk, giving back some historical data, and projecting on one of the most important relationships that Pakistan has had with this great country. Thank you so much, first of all, for turning out on a working day. In fact, the last few days have been extremely busy for all of us, but when I was asked by Chaudhry Munir and Rizwan, I said I could not say no, because this is something which I clearly associate with. This is a map of our region, and I'm very happy that from US, I'm going back to my region. I'm going to Kyrgyzstan, which is right north of Pakistan, and it is the heart of Central Asia. It's west of China, east of Uzbekistan, south of Kazakhstan, and north of Tajikistan. Like Kyrgyzstan, Pakistan has also a great strategic advantage as it connects different regions of the world. It's a natural bridge between South Asia, Middle East, and Central Asia. It is a country which it's a new country. It was founded only, 71 years ago, but it has a proud tradition, multi-faith tradition. It is on the banks of River Jhelum that the Hindu Vedas were written 4,000 years ago. It was here that Alexander the Great came and started a new civilization where there was a blending of Western civilization and Eastern civilization called Gandhara. It was from this part of the world that Buddhism spread to Afghanistan, Central Asia, and went as far as Far East. It was in this country that the Arabs came in the 7th century, the Turks came in the 10th century, and the last of the great Turks, the Mughals, came in the 15th, 16th century, which gave some amazing architecture like Taj Mahal, the Red Fort, the Badshahi Mosque, as well as the beautiful language of Urdu, which is a connector now not only of Pakistan, but of all South Asia. It's a language which connects people with beautiful poetry, beautiful music, dance. It has a rich tradition. It is, interestingly, the 5th populous country even today. We recently passed Brazil. We have a problem in that. I strongly believe that when we got independence, we were 35 million, the West Pakistan part of it. And now we are almost 210 million. That's something that we have to focus on. But it is a young country. 64% of our population is under 30 years of age. At a time when there is a global shortage of manpower, Pakistan could be a supplier of knowledge, labor, intellectual input all across the world. Its economy, it was a point that you had shared with me, is as big as South Africa and Malaysia. Strategically, it has an ideal location. It has a growing retail sector, and I'm happy. The latest economic transformation in the world is because of technology. And Pakistan is also contributing into that. This year, for the first time, our exports, software exports, exceeded $1 billion. And in years to come, I think Pakistan export in the software field would be, if you go to Pakistan, even I was pleasantly surprised. Uber, Careem, BNB, Grubhub, everything is operating there. Our youth have the skills, the language skills, the technical skills to be part of the global village that we are witnessing all before us. It has a great 9 million strong diaspora. As per the US figures, 500,000 Pakistani Americans live in this great country, but as per our estimate, the numbers are probably closer to 1 billion. And it is a very educated, economically integrated diaspora who are educated, and their median income is pretty high. Its retail market is worth $152 billion. And there was an important point made by yesterday by our ambassador, that people are coming into Pakistan and making tons of money in different sectors. Although Americans have been there in Pakistan from its inception, but lately we have seen that European companies and Chinese companies and Middle Eastern companies have come in Pakistan in a big way and have made enormous profits. Telenor, China Mobile, these companies are doing extremely well, but so are the American companies. I will be discussing them during the course of my talk. I always show this photograph. In fact, this Sunday I was giving a talk at Michigan State University, Lansing. And I said, I come to this town very frequently, but this was the first time I was giving a talk there, because they have a very interesting bookshop there. It's called the Curious Bookshop, which is right opposite the main campus of Lansing. And in that bookshop, I came across January 8, 1948 issue of Life magazine with the picture of our leader who founded the country, Mr. Muhammad Ali Jinnah. We call him the great leader, Qaid-e-Azam. And in the course of his interview, he said that, mark you, Pakistan will be the pivot of Asia. I think, despite serious economic security challenges, that time is coming. And we will see a lot of changes, and I hope this. In fact, there was one more article written in the Atlantic by Robert Kaplan. When he went to Gwadar, he said that this could be the Rotterdam of Asia. So Pakistan is really coming up and assuming its rightful role. Pakistan's relationship with US started from the very inception. Our first Prime Minister, Mr. Liaquat Ali Khan, came to the US on a 3-week visit in 1951, May 51. He came to Chicago as well. A lot of people know, he drummed in a jazz bar here, and he spoke at the University of Kansas, Missouri, University of Missouri, Kansas City, on 13th of May, 1951. I had the proud privilege that I spoke at the same venue, the same university last year. And during that visit, President Truman accompanied him from Washington to New York, to Chicago, to St. Louis, and they traveled all across the US. And he can be considered as the architect of this relationship that started at that time. In the US history, in the last 260, 70 years, only one foreign president has been given an official banquet at the residence of the founding president of the US, George Washington in DC, and that was the Pakistani President Ayub Khan. This is a picture of Mrs. Kennedy traveling from Washington to London, not Pakistan, on a PIA. At that time, it was a great paper to fly with. That airline incidentally set up 8-9 major airlines. Emirates, which is considered to be the top airline in the world, its call sign is EK. E stands for Emirates, K stands for Karachi. It was set up by PIA by 2 DC-10s. The flight crew, the pilots, the flight engineers were all Pakistanis. Singapore Airline was set up by Pakistan. Well, incidentally, her father was, Samina's father was one of the pioneers of this great airline, which Singapore Airline, Malta Airline, so many airlines with Gulf Air was set up by PIA. I hope PIA is able to revive its old glory. It was the first Asian airline to fly a jet in Asia. And it was the first airline to operate a flight to China. In fact, Pakistan played a critical role in bringing the US and China together through the highest level of diplomacy, which was conducted by our president. And of course, the other picture is of Jacqueline Kennedy in Lundy Kotal. Lundy Kotal is in Khyber Agency, which is in the eye of the storm in the last 30, 40 years. Mrs. Kennedy toured all across Pakistan in an open car, and she was welcomed very warmly by the people of Pakistan. The horse, which was with President Kennedy when he was assassinated, was a gift from the government of Pakistan. It was called Sardar. US is Pakistan's biggest trading partner. The figures are slightly outdated. Last year we were around $6.6 billion. And of course, US has had sizable presence in different sectors of the economy. In fact, there has been a lot of talk of the CPAC, which is called the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. One of the biggest beneficiaries of those projects has been General Electric, because a major portion of those investments are in the energy sector, and the turbines being used are by GE. Similarly, Procter & Gamble went to Pakistan in the early 80s. Last year, their profits were over $500 million. PepsiCo Pakistan is probably one of the best performing markets in Asia. It is definitely the biggest market in South Asia. Ingredion, a company which was called Corn Products, a local Chicagoan company, their 4th biggest market globally is Pakistan. Last year, their profits were around $280 million. I met the former CEO of McDonald's who resigned last 2 years ago. And he said at that time, McDonald's was not doing very well. He said one market where we are doing very well is Pakistan. I said, well, that's what we like to eat and have fun. Abbott has it. So, but these investments were all made in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. This is what we need, that more American investment should come to the Pakistani market because it's a market of 210 million people, which is right next to two global markets of over 1 billion people. We have a free trade agreement with China. So practically, if you can export to Pakistan, you have an access to a market of 1.5 billion people. So that's one thing that we can all work on. Pakistan, strategic partners, Pakistan has been a strategic partner of the US. In fact, Pakistan and Turkey were perhaps the only two countries which were part of the strategic alliance of NATO, CENTO, SEATO. So Pakistan was a part of CENTO and SEATO. We played a critical role during the Cold War. We, along with Afghanistan, played a critical role in pushing back the Soviet army from Afghanistan. And because of those efforts, US became the sole military power of the world. So these are the contributions. US has contributed a lot to Pakistan, but that's what Pakistan has contributed in terms of, and of course, Pakistan made a significant in opening up China to the US. At a time when we are listening talks of growing trade wars between the two biggest economies and powers of the world, Pakistan still strongly believes that these two countries should have a great working relationship. It is good for them, it is good for our global village. The US, in turn, has been very critical in setting up institutions in Pakistan in government, defense, education. Not many people know that Institute of Business Administration, Karachi, was the first business school set up outside North America in the late 50s. There was no business school in Europe, there was no business school anywhere else in the world, and it was set up by University of Southern California in the late, thank you. Then they also helped us in building different dams, Warsak, Tarbela, Mangla, and of course, US played a critical role along with the World Bank in signing the Indus Water Treaty between India and Pakistan in 1960. It has at present the largest Fulbright program. They invite me for the last 3 years. They have been inviting me to the Fulbright Scholars Program every year at University of Wisconsin-Madison. And this is a picture of 173 young women, men from all parts of the country. And all of them are doing their masters and PhD in all different fields. I think so this is a long-term investment by the US in creating bridges of friendship, cooperation between the two countries. And what was more heartening about that scholarship program, I've noticed that you see young women and men coming from the remotest areas of Balochistan, Gilgit-Baltistan, Sindh, Central South Punjab in that program. So we are very grateful for that relationship. Norman Ernest Borlaug. One of my first visits, I wanted to pay a tribute to this great man who contributed greatly globally. He got a Nobel Prize in 1961-62 for bringing the Green Revolution. And he turned Pakistan into a wheat importing nation when we were only hardly 35 million to a wheat exporting nation of 205 million. So that's a great contribution that the US had, not only in Pakistan, but in all across the world. This was the book that I recommend to all my young colleagues, especially the young one. What's your name? Dan. This is a book written by Fakir Sayyid Ijazuddin. It is about from a head through a head to a head. This was the high-level diplomacy that was conducted by Nixon President Nixon had approached a number of countries before to make an opening to China, and the Chinese had turned down. But when he asked Pakistan and we asked the Chinese, they said yes. And through that, Secretary of State Kissinger flew on a secret mission to Islamabad, and he was flown in a PIA aircraft, Samina, from Islamabad to Beijing. And when Nixon came to Beijing in '72, the first word spoken to him by the Premier Chu and Lai was, "Don't forget the bridges you crossed." My request to all of you is there that still the relationship between the two countries is security driven. We have to make it development, people to people, and business driven. Because as long as the relationship does not have strong economic, social, political, people to people content, it loses its relevance. For that, the great Pakistani diaspora can play a critical role. It is, so I would strongly urge the Pakistani American community here that they should really try to make more connection between these two great countries to carry this important relationship forward. At times I remember we've had some challenges in this relationship, but we've had these challenges with the US all across the 70 years. But that should not deter us to seek new avenues of cooperation between the two sides. Our biggest strength, as I stated at the beginning, are the Pakistani American in the US. They are 0.8% of the total US foreign born population. 18% of Pakistani diaspora are doing extremely well. Pakistani organizations like Apna and Open are playing a critical role in creating more. In fact, Apna has over 20,000 graduates, Pakistani trained physicians working in the US. And I tell them that your outreach is the most because you touch the lives of ordinary Americans. I've been to Dakotas, Iowa, and even in the smallest town, you will find Pakistani physicians. So they can play an important role. Similarly, an organization, Open, is trying to encourage more young entrepreneurs to make connections between the two sides. And we have to work on these things. I will be briefly touching about Pakistanis who have done extremely well in the US. There's one from this state, Shahid Khan, who is the owner of Jackson Jaguars. He appears in the Fortune 500 companies. Riz Ahmed is a British Pakistani, but he appeared on the cover of Time magazine. So I'm happy now Pakistanis are coming into Hollywood, into media. So these are the kind of presence in economic sectors which will create more linkages between the two sides. Kumil Nananjani was the first Pakistani American who opened Saturday Night Live. So Pakistanis are making contribution, but we need to do more. These are some politicians. Ali Sajjad, he was my class fellow in school way back. He's the mayor of Artesia town in California. He ran for the state election, got 17,000 votes. Next time, that's all. Jay Jalisi is again a Pakistani trained physician who's in Maryland state representative for the last 2-3 terms. Bushra Amiwala is a young girl from our own town who got 12,000 votes for the Cook County. So Pakistanis are making contribution. So my request to you is that make an effort that most of these connections are made between these two countries, because you are the strongest bridge that can connect the two countries. And of course, don't be deterred by challenges and ups and downs. These are things will improve in times to come. So these were some of my impressions. In conclusion, I would personally like to thank, on behalf of my wife and myself, to Sabir Center and all the people for our wonderful 5 years together. In fact, we've spent more time in this town than even in Islamabad. 5 years, our sons, when they came here, one was a high schooler, the other was a middle schooler. When we leave, thank God, one has graduated and the other has joined the university. So we are leaving, but we're leaving behind some great friendships, some great memories, and some great connections. And I can assure you that our connection with you, all of you, and with this small town will always remain. And of course, we're leaving a part of our heart behind, our youngest son, who's not even turned 18, but this will be a connection between our, Yes, and yes. Hania was also part of the project of Puneet Saab when she edited halal consumer content for. Well, with these words, thank you so much. And Rizwan, I'm truly honored. Puneet Saab, I'm truly honored. And I'm truly honored by presence of so many friends because yes, you said two dinners, at times I'm having 3 events a day, and I put on six pounds. So I'm looking back to go to Kyrgyzstan and do some horse riding to lose all the extra fat that I have accumulated. So if you have any questions, I'll be very happy to answer that. Thank you so much.
Mr. Ambassador, doesn't that have a nice ring, Ambassador Tirmizi? A couple of things. You shared several memories. Thank you so much. Those memories are lifelong. But there are 2 other things about U.S.-Pakistan relations that you touched upon. Thanks for joining us, Hania, that I'd like to share with the audience. You talked about Prime Minister Liaquat Ali Khan coming to Chicago. He visited the First National Bank of Chicago, now Chase Bank. He also visited Kermit McCormick's state. He was a state guest there in Wheaton, Illinois. But more importantly, and more memorably, his wife shopped at Woolworth. That doesn't exist anymore, but it did. She shopped there using a shopping cart, wearing a Pakistani gharara. If you'd like to get more details on that, it's on my Facebook. Another thing about Pakistani-American contribution is on Facebook you see newborns from all different faiths, ethnicities in the US, but almost invariably they are all swaddled in a blanket and it looks the same all the time. The blankets are made by a company in Mundelein, a suburb of Chicago, but it's manufactured in Karachi. So just about every American newborn infant, the first cloths they touch is made in Karachi. Hania, Faisal, thank you so much for part of our community life for such a long time. These are lifelong memories, and as a small token, thanks. On behalf of Ifanka Board of Trustees, Board of Directors, and Saville Center, I'd like to present you with a little plaque.
Thank you so much. You don't have to For the 1.5. So this will be one of them. Thank you so much.
May I read this to the audience? Sabeel Center presents Honorable Faisal Niaz Tirmizi, Consul General of Pakistan, Chicago, 2013 through 2018, Ambassador Designate. When we were going to the print, he was Ambassador Designate of Pakistan to the Kyrgyz Republic. In grateful appreciation of your presentation, trajectory of Pakistan-US relations at the inaugural Muslim Diplomats lecture series at Sabeel Center, Tuesday, 16 Zulhaj, 1439 Hijrah, August 28, 2018. Once again, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. We will have Q&A for a short time, but those of you who have any questions, do we have a separate mic for it? It's on that side, it's right there. But I have to forewarn you, those of you who have any questions or comments for Mr. Ambassador, you're standing between us and food. So be brave. If you have any question, just a second, Dr. Khan, please. Critical thing, somebody lost her cell phone. So if you found a cell phone lying around, let us know. Thank you.
Sir.
You have in my friend, philosopher and guide, recently you said that in the book Leaders, President Ayub Khan said to President Richard Nixon, it is dangerous to be an adversary of the United States, but it is fatal to be an ally of the United States. Please comment on it.
Well, yes, that's a comment which was quoted President Nixon. When President Nixon lost the famous 1960 election against President Kennedy, because before that he was the vice president of President Eisenhower. So after losing the election, he went for the tour of different Asian and European countries, and one of the leaders that he met was Ayub Khan. That was a comment which was written in his book, famous book, and I think it is President Nixon is one US president who redeemed himself after being disgraced as a scholar, because he wrote extensively on foreign affairs and he wrote extremely well. There is an element of truth in that, but you know that's how relationship between international players are, because it's the natural interests that derive the relationship. But that's the strength of diplomacy and statecraft, that you have to take out the best deal out of the worst possible conditions. As I said during the course of my talk, US has played a critical role in setting up so many institutions within the country, and for which we are deeply grateful. But Pakistan has also played 2-3 critical roles in making US the sole superpower. At present, we've had some differences with the US, especially with regard to Afghanistan. But I believe our assessment of the situation in Afghanistan was correct in the very beginning. Because when the Americans had moved into Afghanistan, that was where we had said that ultimately you will have to go for a negotiated settlement with that country. During the course of my talk, I said it that 2 countries which played a critical role in making US superpower, Afghanistan and Pakistan, have not been acknowledged or rewarded for that. And there was an Afghan student who stood up, who was doing his master's in political science there, and he endorsed my comments. So I think that instead of going for use of force, the US has already spent nearly $1 trillion in fighting a war. I think had they spent 1/100th of that amount, $10 billion. I remember my first post was in Turkmenistan, and my ambassador, Tariq Usman Haider, used to tell the president of Unicol, an oil company which was trying to build gas pipeline from Turkmenistan to India through Afghanistan and Pakistan, that you have spent billions of dollars in fighting the Soviets in Afghanistan. Just spent, at that time, the cost of that pipeline was $3 billion. $3 billion. He said, if you start building this pipeline, it will have social, economic, and political knock-on effects. The Afghans are sensible people. If they have an employment to do, they will stop fighting and focus on these things. But unfortunately, that advice was not heeded, and we have had a conflict which has got US involved for the last 18 years with the loss of so many precious lives on both sides and a loss of nearly $1 trillion.
Thanks very much. Now, I don't want to be between you and the food, but I have to ask a question. I'm going forward or is this any possible note significantly, is that the think tank mindset for the religious, social, and academic level, and the political level between American and Pakistan. Because the other countries like India, they spend, I've been in academics a lot, religious academics and other stuff, but there's a lot of presence of the Indian mindset to instigate or to create an induction process for that academia to generate, because America actually, everything, the whole politics of America is based upon the think tank. I think this is the area some need some help, and that can help us a lot to move forward quickly.
I agree with you. You know, Washington, there are around over 100 think tanks in Washington alone. And I was surprised, there are hardly 2 or 3 Pakistani scholars in those think tanks. I think so that it is a failure on our part. Rather than blaming any other, we should encourage our own children to look for other professions rather than lawyers, doctors, engineers. They should go into think tanks, academia, to contribute, because that's what is important in today's world, that who is controlling the narrative. If you don't, that's what they say in America, that if you're not around the table, then you're on the table. So if you want a seat around the table, you have to send your young people to academia, to think tanks, to journalism, and to politics. If Sadiq Khan can be a mayor of London, I'm sure that's what Mayor Rahm Emanuel even says. In 10 years, they should be a Pakistani American mayor of Chicago or New York. So that's the kind of things that we have to get involved in the mainstream American society. We have to make bridges in that. And I couldn't disagree more with you.
Going forward, how do you see or foresee the relation of Pakistan and India, knowing the situation now?
Sir, this is a very important, I think so. India and Pakistan, that's what I tell everyone, that we share the same neighborhood, to live with each other. I have handled India professionally for 2 years at a time when we were very close to a nuclear conflict with them, 2002, 2003, 4, in fact. Now, at present, unfortunately, we are not talking to each other, we're not playing with each other, we're not encouraging tourists to travel to each other country. At a time when the world is becoming a globalized village, we should encourage more trade, more tourism, more sports with India. This is my personal belief. I've always believed that the India-Pakistan conflict will only be resolved if there are 2 strong leaders on both sides. There is some possibility with the new elected government in Pakistan, and Mr. Modi has a very strong following in India. Probably there's some breakthrough, but then looking back at history, I don't see that dynamism or that was shown by Prime Minister Vajpayee. That's where I'm lacking, but I strongly hope that even, at least our children will live in a normal world where India and Pakistan can live together in peace and harmony. And we can be a major engine of growth in the global economy. This is my prayer. With these words, I've been told the food is reserved. Thank you so much.
Once again, thank you very much, Ambassador Tirmizi. Ladies and gentlemen, the food is ready. Help yourself.